question left, if we have time, at the end of the session, you will be free to ask more questions. Please now welcome Tímea,
Yes.
and she will talk about the uncanny world we live in. Then and now, it's about a parallel between Freud's notion of, oh my God, my German is terrible, unheimlich, and the notion of uncanny. No. This, I guess this is for the fun.
Sorry.
Don't worry.
I think I stand up. So
Just please keep this.
can you hear me if I talk like this?
Okay.
Okay.
You want me to help you with this?
I think that's all. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. So I'm a psychologist and a physiotherapist and a PhD candidate at the theoretical psychoanalysis program. So from that perspective, I'm talking about this theme. And in this friendly circle, I would like to say that I am a mother of a 1-year-old, so my English is a bit dusty, but I try my best to be understandable. The uncanny in German, das Unheimliche, is Freud's essay, and it's from 1919. It's the same year old as Brandon Younger. So Freud himself says it means something frightening, fearful, and anxiety-provoking. And he said that the object of his analysis is to find that inner common core of the world which justifies the separation of the uncanny from the frightening, because that's not so clear for the first sight. He points out that the aesthetic interpretation tends to focus on the beautiful, good, and the pleasant, to analyze the positive aspects of life, while avoiding the negative, which is why it is not necessary for a psychoanalyst to analyze this term. So, So first, Jens was talking about the uncanny, and Freud says on behalf of Jens that we must first live with the uncanny sensation, then we can analyze this. And according to Freud, there are two possible alternatives for analysis. One is to detect what meaning has been built into the word uncanny in the course of language development, or the other is to discover what situations, experiences, impressions, and things that the uncanny experience evokes us at the level of. So my thought was that right now we have this kind of sensation for years, thanks to the COVID-19, but they don't have at the time. So Jens said that the phenomenon of the unheimlich derives from the experience that is explicitly uncertain or undecidable, when we do not feel at home or at ease in the situation, but are overcome by anxiety or at least a strange feeling of strangeness. He says of the word itself that it carries with a sense of disorientation, of not knowing where to go next. So if we think about our sensations with the COVID-19, we see that that was the time in our lifetime, I think, because we are really pleasant times, that we didn't know that back then when the lockdown was for a long time and we were at home, that how much time we will spend at home and what comes next, what can the virus do with us, and how dangerous it is. So I think that's a good example for this term, and we were very disoriented for how much time we can spend with this virus, because I think the sensation itself is only from dystopian movies familiar for us. Lubinsky said the yearly homeless feeling expressed by Heidegger can be equated with the Freudian Uncanny, and on an experiential level, they share a sense of intermediacy, a lack of homeliness, and both have something frightening about them. For this, I think that's a good example when we were in the lockdowns at home, and we didn't know how much time we will spend there, and our workplace was our homes, and we consulted online and did everything online because we can't get out there. So in our homes, we were homeless in some strange way, because there was our family too and our relatives, and we had to make a place for home, like a corner in our home, but there was this homeliness feeling because our home was not that safe than before. And this homeless feeling is also similar to the feeling when you are at the hospital, and a lot of people who had COVID-19 had to go to the hospital, and they were basically homeless right then while they were staying at the hospital, and had the treatments for the COVID. Freud said in the essay, it can often and easily be uncanny when the boundaries between reality and fantasy became blurred, when we find ourselves confronted with something we thought was fantastic. For that, I think that's a good example if we think about our online life. I'm a psychologist, so I had to my sessions with my clients online. And sometimes when we got to know someone new, then we only saw each other's faces, the rest of the bodies are hidden because of the screen, and when some issues with the internet or with the technology came in, for example, the internet was mixing and the screen was blurred or something else, then we had so much more. We had to use our fantasy so much more than usual. So that wasn't the same feeling like when we were meeting in person. Freud said the uncanny is everywhere, and when the essay was 100 years old, then the Freud Museum in London made a conference about the uncanny, and there said Morlock on his speech that if the uncanny is everywhere, then it is not really anywhere, or at least it can be found around the fixed coordinates, because Freud actually cannot determine where is this feeling. And we had the same experience at the COVID and now this war in Ukraine, because we thought it was just a one-time thing. I mean, the COVID only had one session or it was COVID-19, but we thought we only had to get one vaccine, not I think 4 or 3 or 4. It was a lot that we had to take to fight the virus or protect ourselves from the virus, and we didn't know this enemy who was around us, but no one knows where. We had to always wash our hands and do such things, and we thought that this is everything we can do, but we couldn't find that also, like we couldn't find the uncanny because it's everywhere or nowhere. It depends on who you believe. Roy said he was at this conference too, that it is as if Freud had not written the essay but dreamt it. The whole essay is dreamlike, it poses questions, either does not answer them, or if it does not explain them, moves on too soon, and what we get is a mysterious, closed and uncertain nebulous text. Reading the essay, it seems that Freud was just evoking, trying to capture the uncanny, but it keeps slipping away. I think we had the same experience in the COVID era, because we thought it was over, but then again was another lockdown and another vaccine. It was always this repetition, and we didn't know how much time we have to from our life spent with this, living in this COVID era. Freud said the uncanny is the type of the frightening which can be traced back down to an intimate, long-known thing, and I think that's just the death threat that we felt at that time, because in the COVID is, of course, it was really dangerous for a lot of people. They died, and I think everyone has a friend or a family member or someone who had it and was suffering from it. So I think that time in our life, it just provoked very much our death drive, and after the COVID, we thought we are again our pleasant times, but then came this war in Ukraine, and it's really death strike provoking again, I think, because we thought that it's also short thing and it will end soon, but it's now for over more than a year, and it wasn't short offensive, I think. András said that, referring to Freud's essay, anything that can be traced back to the repetition conclusion can have an uncanny effect. And like I said, it was so much vaccines, so much lockdown. We thought, we felt that that time is only this. We lived actually in repetition conclusion for years. And it was a really hard time to be there, because it seemed like it was never going to be over. Lieder said, he spoke again in this conference of the Uncanny when it was 100 years old, that the metaphor, the spooky or the uncanny, is when the animal inside us picks up its fears. It is an experience beyond narrative when something strange happens. I think the last 5 years in our lives is very strange, because before the COVID we were living fearless, and we thought these dystopian things like war and viruses and such things doesn't in our lifetime. Of course, we know that a long time ago there was war, but we thought that it can never happen to us. And because I had film studies before I became a psychologist, I would like to make a recommendation for you to understand this term. And this is the Twin Peaks, and I would like to encourage you to see this series, Twin Peaks. For the repetition conclusion, it is a great example. And in 1991, Laura Palmer is the main character. She said, "I see you again in 15 years in the series," and I think that's really interesting, because after 25 years, they made the story again, and it was a new season back then, 2017, I think, yes. And I think there is no other series in which the character says, "I see you again X years," and they made the series like that after that. the Twin Peaks is a thing that no one can release. For example, they made one season, and 1 year later again one season, and they made after the series before movie, if I say it correctly, it was Firewalk with Me, and after 20 years they made from the cutted images from the Firewalk with Me a new movie, and they produced in Cannes. It was I can't remember right now the title, Firewalk with Me, The Missing Pieces, and after that they continued the series again. So on the London conference they said that the anthropomorphization of the uncanny is David Lynch himself. So I think if you think about his work, or you know his work, then you can understand that term, or if you see Twin Peaks. And thank you for your attention.
Okay, I'm not an expert in Freud, but I remember that the same terms is used with other authors, such as Hegel and Heidegger. And the key word to understand the word in German, which is, in my opinion, not well translated in English, is the word Heim, which means home. So the suggestion for you, because I have no question, is to look also to the use of this term in Hegel and in Heidegger. In Hegel, because it is possible that Freud borrowed the term from Hegel, and Heidegger, because in any way Heidegger dealt with Freud terminology. Any question?
Yeah, thank you very much for this. I like the parallel between COVID-19 and the uncanny. Can you tell us a little bit more? I was wondering, is this part of a larger project about the uncanny, or and what kind of project this fits into?
Yes, it's a larger project actually. My thesis is about the uncanny, and I analyze it with films and series. Yeah, that's why I had to take the Twin Peaks with me. Yeah, it is one example for it, and I use David Lynch's work priority, but I think I have to use Ingmar Bergman, of course, because he is so absolute in the psychoanalysis, and the strange thing what I would like to do is to analyze Disney movies too. That was my original idea for my thesis, and it's right now a part of it. So I think, and it is the origin, my theme, that the live version action Disney movies make this feeling. I think when you know the original Disney movie, like the animated version, it is so nice and pleasant, and everything is nice and happy in them, but the live action version is scary, a lot of things. For example, if you look about the Aladdin and look at Abu Monkey, then I think it's really frightening in the live action version, so such as the Lion King, and we don't know why they have to make these things. So I think there is a repetition conclusion in this era at all in Hollywood and everywhere else, and I think that's a very interesting question. So that's my theme.
is?
I had actually two remarks, questions, but I'm not sure if it has been just said, but it's about nostalgia. Because nostalgia comes from, it's also literally means like coming home, and it's like an early modern word that came from soldiers coming home and not really recognizing it or having idealized the world they were living in, coming back. And having therefore a kind of longing feeling that's also sad, it's also with strangeness. And thinking about the Uncanny, it's like quite usually connected to these two things. So I was wondering, how much do you think about nostalgia that's connected to the Uncanny as well? And I'll make small remarks if you don't have to on it. Professor now in Cambridge. She works with the Uncanny in sculpture a lot. So I thought maybe I can give you the.
Oh, thank you very much.
Probably helpful.
Okay, thank you.
What question?
About nostalgia, I would like to answer. Freud himself, in the essay, mentions déjà vu and this feeling. So he talking about it originally in the essay. Yes.
That's déjà vu.
But it's. So he mentions the nostalgia too and déjà vu too. He analyzed this phenomenon from a lot of perspectives, and it is one of them. I just didn't mention it.
Thank you.
You've probably seen it, but I recently watched that documentary about David Lynch and his visual art. And when you were talking about the compulsive repetition, I think, I remember he was describing sort of this process of starting art in that way, where he would go to the same place every day and do the same thing over and over again. And his parents were kind of like, maybe you should get a real job to be a assistant in doing that. So I think that there could be an interesting connection there also if you're looking at David Lynch with not only like what he's producing, but also the process of creating that.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and himself really interesting on his autobiography days, because with a journalist. So he wrote with a journalist that autobiography. They are talking a lot about his origins and his temperament and everything else. How does his work working? I don't know. So how is his art in process? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So,